was MC at a banquet and Robert was the speaker. And he was the best speaker I had ever heard in Oklahoma at the time. He was entertaining, he was hysterically funny, and yet the content of what he spoke about was so strong, and it was so deep and rich, and I just was like, who is this person?
Robert Henry has been involved in the Native American community probably most of his life. And I recall we were at a gathering at a time where the leaders of the tribes in Oklahoma were gathered around Red Earth, and Robert was invited. He was one of the speakers and got to meet him there. And I was impressed with just how quickly he jumps into conversations and begins conversations, and was more impressed with his knowledge of the Native American community and issues.
The first time I ever interacted with him on a significant basis was at a symposium event he holds every year. And I led a field trip, and because he is very much into botany, you know, we got along really well right away, you know. He's really quite a good botanist. So that was a bond we had.
We followed very similar academic paths, Robert and I. When he was at law school, writing for Law Review, attending Oxford, and preparing for his first legislative campaign, I was sitting on the hood of my car at Shawnee Lake drinking beer.
I'm Ed Kelly, editor of The Oklahoman, with Robert Henry, the newly named president of Oklahoma City University. First of all, congratulations, Robert, in your new position. You'll start next July 1, is that right?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the congratulations.
You're welcome. A lot of people in Oklahoma know you. You've had a long, distinguished career as a state legislator in your 20s. You were an attorney general in your 30s. You were a law school dean in your late 30s and early 40s, and for the past decade and a half, you've been on the federal bench. Why would someone in your particular position, not just on the federal bench, but in a particularly important role in the 10th Circuit, give up that position, a lifetime position, to become president of OCU?
Because a better position opened up.
It really kind of shocked me when I finally figured out that Robert was interested in becoming the president of Oklahoma City University. He was obviously a federal judge of the 10th Circuit, which is he had a lifetime appointment. You know, even after he retired, he would continue to have lifetime retirement. And I'd talked to him for a couple years prior to when he took over, because I knew Daniels was getting ready to retire, and so, you know, Tom was gracious enough to give us a year like Robert has so that we can try to find someone. And I had talked to Robert a couple times about, well, how about you? I'd like to have you. Why don't you apply? Oh no, you know, I can't do that. I've got my judgeship and I do all that, and it's a lifetime and all these sort of things. But he said, you know, I'm really interested in it, and I'll see if we can help you find somebody. And that's kind of what we were doing. And then he called me into his at his federal office here in Oklahoma City one day. He said, I want to talk to you about OCU. And I said, great. You know, I figured he had a name for me or had something. And we probably visited for 30 or 45 minutes just about a variety of things, just you know, not so much about the school, but maybe some about the school, but just kind of a little bit about everything. And as I was getting ready to leave, he said, oh, I need to hand you something. And he handed me a file folder. And what it was his resume. Well, once he handed me his resume, he never mentioned to me one time in the conversation that I'm interested in the job or I'm thinking about it or what do you think? Well, when he handed me the resume, I knew right then, actually my first thought was I got him, you know, once you said that. But then I thought, well, he is interested. And so that really kind of started the process. We were interviewing a number of people and we just didn't seem to have the right match at that point. And Robert, being such a brilliant man, being obviously from Oklahoma, being a federal judge, well known, been attorney general, been the dean of our law school, he had all the prerequisites that we were looking for, and for me, I thought it was an easy fit.
I was on the presidential search committee after President McDaniel announced that he was retiring. And right before we were about to interview President Henry, and at the time he was on the bench on the 10th Circuit, so it was a very hush-hush thing for us to be interviewing him. And I remember that Mayor Norick pulled me aside when we were walking to the interview and said, "You're really gonna like this guy. He's really great. I'm telling you, he's gonna be great." And I thought, okay, if you're pushing him up this high, he can't be as great as you say. Then sure enough, when we had that interview, I was so impressed by him. So energetic, so charismatic, so able to connect with everybody on every level. And I just knew that he was going to be the perfect fit for OCU. And he's been a great friend and mentor to me ever since. And so I'm really grateful for all that he and Jan have done for OCU.
I always wanted him to be on the Supreme Court, and I think he probably had a shot at that. So for him to come home, I think is a real tribute to how much he loves this place. I actually thought he would make a better college president than a law school dean. He's not really mean enough to be a law school dean. He's an affable guy and great with the students. Obviously, Oklahoma probably hasn't produced a better academic mind than Robert. I thought it was a perfect fit, frankly. He's a good fundraiser, unfortunately for me, but he's got all the attributes it took to run a college.
I would think that one of the big reasons Robert chose this position, to be named president of OCU was maybe two things. One is he loved the challenge. His life, even as an attorney, a lawyer, has been so varied. Dean of the law school, serving in the federal courts, attorney general, all sorts of things that he did. So I think he would enjoy the challenge. And the second piece, and I think again, is just his love for this city, Oklahoma City, and many people call OCU Oklahoma City's university, which I believe it is as well. It's historic, been around, since statehood. And then I think again his love for academics, and to see young people come to school to grow, to learn, and to go off and serve the city, the state, and of course the country and the world.
I was really surprised when Robert agreed to even be considered for this role. I'd always thought of him as president of Oklahoma City University. His love of the liberal arts, his enjoyment of education and students, and his familiarity with OCU. He'd been dean of the law school.
Well, and of course, I think a huge driving factor was that he wanted to be around for Josh. He was on a ship that would have taken him to DC, and he would have had a long career as a judge at the Supreme Court level. The fact that he turned that down, to be close to his son, but then also to be involved in a university that has a long-standing reputation in Oklahoma City, that really does make a difference in the economy of Oklahoma City, the growth, the job market, the talent, and just how we've been able to kind of progress in the past 10 years especially. I was the communications chair the first year that he was president. So he made sure and sat down with me and the president of SGA at the time, John Riesenberg, and really tried to make sure he kind of had our buy-in to help, message some things appropriately. So it was really awesome to have that experience right off the bat. Getting to talk to, how many universities can you go to in like your junior year? You're having weekly meetings with the president of the university like that. I was so nervous. I remember just walking in and I'm like, I don't even want to say anything because I'm going to make a fool of myself, but he put me at ease right away. And he's just that kind of person. So it went on from there.
I think what made him great at that job was connecting with students. He would just sit down with a group of random students in the cafeteria, and within 2 or 3 minutes, they'd all just be sitting there in awe, listening to him tell a story. And he'd learn their names, he'd learn their majors, he'd learn about their families, and then he asked about them the next time when he saw them. He did a great job of connecting with students and really getting to know them at a very personal level.
He's one of the most genuine people I know. Robert's affable, intelligent, kind. He's always conversant, and odd though it may be, he's got a great sense of humor.
I had promised him whenever I was an undergrad that I would take him out in a rowing boat. So senior year came and went, and I'd run into him and say, "Hey, remember that? Remember you said you were going to take me out on a rowing boat?" And I said, "Yeah, and we really need to get that on the calendar." And then more time would go by. And I think finally he bought some Learn to Row at an auction or something like that. So basically it was cemented in at that point. I knew he knew it wasn't easy. I knew he knew it was difficult. But once he got out there were 4 of us in the boat. I'd been out for a couple of years, and I remember I was sitting behind him, so I was sitting in bow. He was sitting at 2 seat, and then there was a couple guys in 3 and 4 seat, and you could tell it was a little bit of frustrating, but he was having so much fun with it. He was cracking jokes the entire time. I could tell he really enjoyed it.
Finance isn't glamorous and glitzy, but I think if I said the word bond refinance and interest rate swap to Robert, he would think of my name first, because we worked together a lot on those issues particularly.
His relationship with the board was excellent, and we've got a very strong board right now. Not that we haven't had in the past, but that's an ongoing thing. It changes, and I think he's done a great job of creating a very strong, supportive board. As a member of the executive committee, it was a joy to work with him. And as secretary of the executive committee, I had to sign a lot of documents, and it felt so good to know that Robert had signed them first.
I think his staff now, what I'm going to call it the executive team, his cabinet, I think is outstanding. And I've been through a number of people up there over the years, and I can say without a doubt, this is as good as we've ever had, and that's a compliment to him. He understands to hire good people. Some leaders and leaders that are not good, they want people under them that are nothing but yes people, or less qualified than they are to make them look good. Robert's the opposite. He wants the best he can find. I'm the same way. I want the best person I can find under me. Let them do their job. Just let them do their job, and he does that. He's got a very good executive team, and I know they hate to see him leave, but 8 years. He said he'd give us 5. We got 8. I think that's fine.
Robert has always had a great interest in diversity. He talks fondly about his days at the University of Oklahoma, working with segregation in the state, and he can talk so often about the tribes and its history. Choctaw Nation, Chickasaw Nation, folk like that. They understand the role that Robert has played in our own lives, our own destiny, and certainly our future.
Robert has a real warmth about him, and he is also the quintessential Renaissance man. I mean, you can talk Shakespeare, you can talk wine, and things in between, and maybe Shakespeare and wine are really close together on the spectrum and not far apart at all. But I think if you look up Renaissance man in the dictionary, there is a picture of Robert Henry.
That is totally true. He's definitely the Thomas Jefferson of Oklahoma of our time, for sure, because he knows everything.
Very smart man, but when you talk to him, he doesn't come across as being, I know more than you do. Not at all. I mean, he can communicate at whatever level you communicate. I'm not a big thinker type guy. I do look kind of in the future on a lot of stuff, but I'm not, an historian and all of that. And so he can communicate with me fine. He's got to keep it down a little bit for me, but we just have a great time, and I just enjoy visiting with him because every time I do, end up learning something.
Jan Henry has been such a wonderful addition to Oklahoma City University. The person who comes in as a spouse for this role, that's not their career, and it's certainly not for Jan, and she's a dentist. And yet they give so much, and Jan certainly has, in terms of their time and their private life that becomes fairly public and so accessible. And Jan has just been a wonderful asset to Robert and to the school. these years. I've seen her have beautiful friendships with the students and entertain night after night after night in such a gracious way. And I hope that she's enjoyed it. I believe she has. We can never pay her back for the love and generosity and hospitality that she's provided.
I think Robert's legacy here at this university will last for some time. They're serving as a president who I think has forged some important relationships with companies, corporations in the city and across the state, of course, with tribal nations.
I think Robert's going to be remembered for making some hard choices, but really stabilizing the university.
I think he's going to be remembered as a brilliant mind, the Renaissance man, as he's been called. I hope he's remembered as a president that really loved our university, because he did. You know, that's what I hope. I know in his heart that's the way he feels.
Robert has told the story that when he was trying to make this decision, that he was in the car and the song "Make Our Garden Grow" from Candide came on, and he pulled the car over and he was really moved by the song. And I believe that. I hope I have the story right. But I think of that because OCU has sung that, performed that before, and it's just such a beautiful piece of music. And that's what he has allowed to happen at OCU. Of course, he also loves gardening, but he has made our garden grow with what he's provided, what he's put of himself into this special piece of soil, and what he's given others to grow and become who they're meant to be.